Right, let the viewers build up for a sec. Right, good evening, guys. Welcome to another episode on Disqualified Dads. Today, the studio will be looking extra bright. I'm playing about with some lights, just testing a few things out. The studio's been slightly neglected for a while, so I'm now picking things up a little bit. There's going to be a full revamp in the studio, so look, if the lighting's too much or it ain't good, just put it in the comments. Also, today, Mr. Ryan is not with us. Mr. Ryan was getting above his station, so I gave him the night off. See, I put him back. Just said, Mr. Ryan, back off a little bit, yeah? I've got another big gun coming on tonight. So Mr. Ryan's slightly in the background. He'll be jumping on later. I've got a very special guest tonight, someone very knowledgeable in this field. They've got a lot of knowledge and information to share that will help anyone going through this. So I'm really looking forward to this podcast. If you have questions, put them in the comments. We will try and squeeze in as many questions as we can towards the end, but there's a lot to discuss. Also, thank you to everyone that supports the channel, that follows the channel. Just like, subscribe, follow, and share. I'm not going to go on too much. Let's bring him on. It's Charlie McCready. Mr. Charlie.
Hi, Farouk. How are you?
Mr. Charlie, as we were talking before, jumped on live, I think I'm okay. Now, when I say I'm okay here, considering the subject matter that we are discussing, parental alienation, children, and depending on where you are on the journey, I believe I'm okay and I'm doing better than most. But there are moments. There are moments where I go through phases and moments where I see my children. I visualize them in my head, and I've started visualizing this year where I've started to believe that I'm going to have them full time at some point. I have to believe it. I am believing it. When I say I have to, I do believe it. But the immediate pain that a person feels, the first 6 months to a year of the journey where the separation happens, that trauma, that sharp, constant stone on your chest you're carrying, it is that constant. Since the last time we spoke, even then I was in a good place, but that feeling has subsided, long subsided, and that trauma, I'm not an immediate trauma. So from a perspective of child contact, alienation, I feel I'm doing well. And I almost feel, as I mentioned earlier, I almost feel guilty of the fact that maybe I'm doing a bit too well. I feel guilty for being too positive. I mean,
you've hit probably one of the biggest challenges that parents face. It is starting to get back on with their life again. So just going back to the where are you at now question. I use something called the Kubler-Ross change curve. It's basically a bereavement process that says, what is the emotional journey? So you start with it, and it's basically around death. So you start with shock. So at first, it's like you can't believe your kids are not in your life. Then there's denial. It's still, you again, you can't get your head around it. Then you go into anger, and we've all been there. Then we go into what they call bargaining, which is where we're making deals with God or with other, with whoever we have our faith in. If this happens, if I do this, then this will happen. If I do that, then that will happen. And we move from there into depression, which is we get very, very sad. But what's happening is we're actually getting to the point of moving towards acceptance.
Right.
And acceptance for us it's very different because it's like an open bereavement, because you never get closure on what's happening with your kids, because it's like a living bereavement. But the thing that you were just talking about, where you got hope.
Yes.
That at some point the kids are going to come back in your life. And that's what every parent should hold on to that. Hold on to the hope, but accept the reality of where you're at today.
The immediate reality of today, accept that, but hold on to that hope of a future change or an action or something that will determine the end result in the
That
future.
you're going to get the kids back.
Yes.
And a big mistake, probably the biggest mistake that parents make, is they don't prepare for the point in time that hope then becomes a reality, because they're just dealing with the kids not being in their life, or the kids being very difficult. And what we don't do is we're not ready for the time that the kid suddenly texts us or picks up the phone or turns up at our door, because unless we're really in a good space ourselves, we're going to muck it up.
It's a very valid point, Mr. Charlie. I have to say, I never see. Look, I had visions of, okay, like you said, at different stages of the journey, those visions change depending on where you are in that moment. So initially, the first 6 months to a year, so let's say you haven't seen your children for 6 months to a year, in your mind, they relatively still look the same. In your mind, they like okay, they were in your mind, they're only a year, 6 months a year. So when you see them, they'll be relatively the same.
Yeah.
So the visions that you will have of that meeting again is as such for that time. The thing now is when I think about it now, it's been 3 years, gone 3 years now. I mean, my daughter now, like I said, when I talk about their ages, it was a different time zone. It was a different era. It was a different time zone. Now the thing is,
different kids. They're
exactly,
different people. You're a different person as
they're
well.
frozen. But this is what I'm talking about. I'm still frozen in that time zone. To me, they were.
Absolutely.
I mean, what age they were? 8, 6, and 3, 5, and 7. In my mind, I still have that, and I say to myself that they're frozen there. They're not there. It's not that time zone is gone. So what do they look like? Who are they?
Yeah, but also,
How will it be?
so this is all the preparation that parents need to do. So your relationship with your kids is going to be different for all of us. It's going to be different at the time we get that opportunity to reunite, because our kids are older, they've had more experience, we're different as well.
Yeah.
And we have to look at what was our parenting style when we stopped having contact, if that was the case, versus what does our parenting style have to be when we re-engage with them? Because when we re-engage with them, they're not used to having a dad or a mum in their life. They're not used to us setting boundaries, telling them how to live their life.
Yes.
They want, and what's really interesting is we need to think, what has my child been through? What have they experienced? What are they experiencing today? And what do they need from me? And where we all screw it up is we're so focused on us and our needs that we don't really look at it from the perspective of what our kids need. And what our kids need is just love, compassion, support. They don't want to talk about alienation. And they basically, we are looking at them saying, are you healed? Are you in a position that we can now rebuild the relationship? They're looking at you going, is dad healed? Is he able to have a relationship with me? So this is so subtle, but so simple. The way you rebuild a relationship with a kid is trust. And basically, if they reach out to you and you make the fundamental mistake of thinking, that's it, I've waited for 3 years, I've waited for 5 years, now's my time to tell them my version of the story, you've already lost the battle. You'll push them away.
Okay, all right. Okay, I see what you're saying, Mr. Charlie, but there's a lot, even in that little bit, there is so much to dissect. I think there's so much to dissect. Okay, so let me give you an example. I have these visions sometimes, like random lumps. I'm sitting there. Now, as I said, I'm not in any immediate pain or anything like that.
Which is good, because it's natural for our sense of grief and guilt to dissipate over time. But also it's really important we let go of that stuff, because if you think about it, what does the alienator want you to feel?
Pain,
Grief, guilt. pain, isolation, powerlessness, anger, anxiety, fear, all that stuff. And the person who is perpetuating that experience is us.
Yes. Okay.
It's crazy that if you imagine a marathon, the alienator runs the first 100 yards, gives us a baton, and the baton is the pain, the grief, the guilt,
Yeah.
the injustice, the isolation.
You're running
And we
24
pick it up,
hours. Yeah.
and we run with that baton for years if we're not careful. And we don't stop. We don't stop and go, do you know what? I can throw this baton away anytime I'm ready.
Okay. Let me ask you a question. Yeah. Because this is very interesting. Yeah. Is there a possibility now that we hold on to that baton because deep down we are punishing ourselves? Because deep down on some subconscious level you think, I effed this up, I let my kids down, maybe I should have stayed. Because there's a lot of guys I speak to, and it's crossed my mind a few times, should I just stuck it out? At the time, listen, it was done, someone had to go, unfortunately. Then we ended up here. But you start, because of the immediate pain and the grief, there's an element of, are you holding on to it sometimes because you feel guilty for not feeling, so you wind yourself up more? Self-sabotage, call it a form of self-sabotage, because you feel, what's the word I'm looking for? You're punishing yourself.
Guilty. You're feeling, quite simply, most of the people, now this is a massive generalism, but most of the people who are alienators tend to have, a mental disorder like narcissism. So they're only thinking about protecting themselves. Most of the people who are targeted parents, so you and me, we tend to be empaths.
100% people pleasers, yeah.
And empaths by nature, we're very self-reflective, which is a strength, but we can get very self-critical, which is where the guilt comes in. So we don't need anybody to beat us up mentally and emotionally, because we're really good at doing that ourselves. So the guilt that we feel is us beating ourselves up about, could I have done this better? Could I have done that better? And I say to every parent, stop beating yourself up. Your partner, your ex, was a train wreck. They are the people who have caused this problem. Sure, we're no angels, and we've all done little bits that have contributed to it. But on a scale of like 100, we contributed 5% generally.
Yes.
These people.
While you're talking, Mr. I'm taking notes if you don't mind as well. Yeah, sorry.
Don't worry. These people they were going to be a train wreck, regardless. Whoever they married, whoever they got involved with. It just happened to be us. And because we're nice people and we're gentle people, we kind of take it so personally, but we shouldn't. And also, most of us don't realize just how widespread parental alienation is.
Yes.
I mean, it's affecting something like 8% of the population in the UK. It's an enormous number. But most of us, when it happens to us, we just think, oh, it's just me. It's just my little world. It's just, I'm an exception. You're not. We're all going through the same crap. We all go through the same guilt, and we can all leave that baton behind us.
Yes, I think even on that, there's a lot to cover. So let me dissect a little further there. So we've talked about the spectrum now, yeah? You've touched on this. You've got narcissism is on one spectrum, and then you've got the empath, the people pleaser. Now, in a lot of these cases of alienation and those who end up in these relationships, like I said, the narcissist is very emotionally in tune to your emotions. They know they're an empath. They know how to make you feel sorry for them and guilt. We know this, Charlie. We talked about it, Charlie. The empath, not the narcissist, can play on these emotions. They know exactly how far to push it. They know I've pushed it too far, to pull back, to not lose overall control, so that we've been manipulated for a long time. We are victims. So there's that healing on its own, that journey there to say that I wasn't the bad one. I'm not guilty. I am the victim here, ultimately. So that's the one aspect of that.
Everybody out there needs to get their head around, actually, I've been abused.
Yes.
I've been emotionally abused. I might have been physically abused. I've been financially abused. I've been abused. And particularly for men, it kind of takes some bravery on our part to say that to yourself. Better still, say it to other people, and just admit you have been abused at the hands of somebody who is an abuser, and they abuse all the people around them. They're abusing your kids,
including the kids. And what they do, the main tactic is, I mean, we talk about is coercive. You have been, when you say abuse, you have been coercively controlled, because they play with your emotions and moods, and the kids form part of this game. We know this. The kids are part of the game. They are pawns. They're used as leverage in the relationship.
totally.
Unfortunately, when the relationship ends, mate, that pawn is used to its full capacity. They've got full leverage and power to do damage. But going on to your next point, Mr. Shaw, that's a very good point. So guys, I think make a note of that. Accept that you were a victim here. You weren't the bad one. Don't feel guilty. That what had to happen in the relationship had to happen. And sometimes I say this, before something went totally out of control, even though you're in immediate pain, you've not got contact with your children, things are bad. What I always say to people, and I used to say this to myself before, like earlier on in the journey, because I knew the reality. I had that strength of will to say, look, I'm hurting, I'm in pain, I ain't seen my kids, maybe I've let them down, maybe I could have tried harder. But the key is this: if we'd have stayed in it, the damage would have been greater to myself and the children, or something else. My point, the situation could not have continued without a greater, what's the word, a bigger clash and a worse circumstance or result. So I say this to guys, I say this to people: you've removed yourself from a toxic situation. So before you can help your kids, even if you're in there, if the environment is toxic, is poison, you're poisoned. You can't help your children if you're poisoned yourself. So remove yourself from the situation first and heal.
Absolutely.
Poison out your system.
Well, going back to that healing thing, because that is so important, and men in particular are rubbish at looking after themselves. Generally, they get very focused on everything else, and also there's the whole social stigma of, you know, people assume because you're a man, you automatically have done something wrong, and of course you don't have your kids because you're an asshole. Whereas that's not true. We're not like that. We're good fathers, we're loving fathers, we're caring. But going back to this whole thing about rebuilding relationships with your kids, because then people see why it's so important to heal. It's really subtle what goes on in the interaction with your kids. When they decide when they want to have that relationship with you, they're going to test to see if you're healed. Now, when I say, are you healed? They will say stuff, consciously or unconsciously, that will trigger you if you're not healed. The stuff that will trigger you will be things, you know, for instance, talking about memories with the alienating parent, stuff that they've done in the past you've not been a part of, stuff that they're going to do in the future you've not been a part of. Now, if you get triggered, and triggering is really subtle. Triggering, if you get badly triggered, you might lash out and say something negative about the other parent. You might try and defend yourself, which we'll come back to later on.
You get defensive, your guard will come up,
but it gets really subtle. If you change your tone of voice, if you change your facial expression, if you change your body language, if you go quiet, all of these things are giveaways to your kid that you're uncomfortable. And if you're uncomfortable, you make them uncomfortable.
I see. So basically, you know, when you say this, so let me dig a little bit deeper into this. So when you say uncomfortable, is it like when you're talking to a stranger and there's like an awkwardness sometimes because you're not, do you see what I'm trying to say? Like, you're not really, is it that type of awkwardness?
There's an awkwardness because again, put yourself in, this is what I say to every parent: go learn about alienation, go learn about what your kid is going through. Because when your kid comes up to you, they're feeling really insecure. They're feeling very vulnerable. They probably have this dual conversation going on in their head, which is a conscious decision to go and start having a relationship with you, but a subconscious narrative that says, time with my dad or my mum will get me into trouble. I don't feel safe with this person. And it'll just be an intuitive sense. They won't be able to articulate it.
It's on a subconscious level. Okay,
so their subconscious is saying, I'm not safe. And if we do something as simple as suddenly go quiet or suddenly get defensive,
that
we're reinforcing
feeling. You're feeding into it.
Absolutely. So you have to be in a really good space yourself. So this is where you have to be healed, because if you're not healed, you're not going to be able to, I mean, ideally, you don't want to be trying to control yourself not getting triggered. You just don't want to be triggered.
Okay, that's a fair point. Okay, as we're on this now, okay, so tell me, because I'm now understanding the subtleties of this and the awkwardness, and I know I speak to guys who almost like the kids are in and out their lives on and off, but they have no real leeway or clout. They can't bollock them. They can't really say anything because they won't, they only ring, and the classic one, they only ring dad need money. And when they're scared to say anything, to look, you only ring me when you want money. Do you want to go out for dinner? Should go for a coffee later. My point is, he goes, I just have to be a very passive person. If they show up, they show up. I take it. If they don't, they don't. I've got no, ultimately in the game of power, you have no leverage. You got nothing. You're at their mercy. You're at your, and the harder feeling is that this is your child and you're at their mercy. Maybe there's some, I don't know if, could you say humiliation is a certain word that you got to add, because you're like a little kid in front of a child. You can't really say nothing. They can have an outburst. So what is, when you say not get triggered, and you have to be healed. So let's focus on that for a second then. How, I mean, because it just sounds to me like you just have to be a very passive with them. You just got to let it fly. They say something to dig you, just let it go and just carry on like nothing was said. Like, even if it's triggered you, play along, you're saying. But so give me more in depth into that.
I agree with you. You have to be, and a lot of the times we do have to be passive, because we don't, as I say, we don't have the power. And this is a classic area that men particularly screw up again, because they get very frustrated by the fact that the kids are being disrespectful, or the kids are not respecting their boundaries, or they just feel like a cash point machine.
Yes.
But you have to think, well, what is the kid going through? You have to be the grown up in the situation and say, okay,
they are victims.
My kid has been empowered by the alienating parent. They've basically been told, you don't have to stick to your dad's rules. You don't have to go to bed when he tells you. You don't have to clean up the dishes. You get to decide when you see him or not. So all the power goes to the kid. Now you have a choice as a dad. You can either maintain your relationship with your kid as best you can, and just accept that this is the dynamic that is going to be for a period of time, or you can fight it. When you fight it, you're going to push your kid away.
Right, yeah.
And when your kid goes no contact, that's much harder to rebuild the relationship, because when you reach out to a kid who has now said, right, I've had enough of my dad, getting them to engage with you, that's hard. At least if you've got some contact, at least if it might seem like the breadcrumbs, but
you can build on that.
You can build on it.
Right.
And the way, what your kids really, I talk about role models, because you have to change your parenting style. So when you're in contact, you have to change your parenting style in advance of ever getting in contact with your kids again, so that when you start engaging with them, you are a different parent. Because it's really easy to anticipate. This is what I do with my coaching all the time. I can tell parents what your kid is likely to be like when they re-engage with you. It's not rocket science.
Okay, does that depend on their age or not, or the age of the child, or is it irrelevant slightly?
Yeah, it'll be relevant to age, but most of the stuff that kids go through is very similar, regardless of their age. It's the same stuff. So you have with the right preparation in terms of changing your parenting style. So when I talk about changing your parenting style, kids, if they've been no contact and they re-engage, they're not going to look at you as being typically a parent that they're going to seek advice from. This is just one example, especially when they get to their teenage years or they're older, because they're not used to having you telling them what to do. So we have to prepare for that. We have to accept the fact that our kids are going to see us more like a peer. And most of us have this burning desire to correct the injustice of what's going on, you have to hold back from doing all of that stuff. But if you do, we also want to impart our knowledge, our wisdom, our worldliness on our kids. And most of us have a strong craving for that. You can still do that, but you have to do it in a different way.
Okay,
So I talk about role models, because only 5% of your communication with anybody is what you say.
Yes.
It's a tiny percentage. The rest of it is, how do you conduct yourself? How are you with other people? Are you respectful? What are your morals like? Are you an integral person with
overall
high
character?
Exactly.
Okay, this aligns perfectly with. So when you're on like a journey of personal growth and development and learning and building your character, as we talked about off air, I do a lot of coaching, I do a lot of reading, studying now, because the word is I am pouring into myself, because I've realized people drift through life. They never invest in themselves. They
Totally.
never truly see themselves as the asset. And this is what I'm saying. You are your
Spot on.
biggest asset in life.
Absolutely.
Invest in yourself. People make sacrifices, scrimp and save, but they will people pleasers. They will lend other people money. They will lose money. They will do things for other people. They will give up their gym class. They will give up their evening class. My point is, you're only robbing yourself there. And the key thing to this is, I think, like you said, to be a role model, you have to go through something, or you pour into yourself and you develop yourself in every way possible. That's the academic, physical's the last one, but I say academic, emotional growth, mental growth, psychological growth, spiritual growth, and then add to that, to put it into a nice package, physical growth. So there's a combination and growth in all areas. And so when you said you have to be that role model, you have to live that. You have to be that guy. So when I say, if your son or daughter comes in your life, you are speaking well, your language is good, you know how to conduct yourself, from the streets, you've polished up how you speak and stuff like that. You've got your not getting control of your emotional growth, understanding your emotions and not responding, taking the time out, count the Kit Kats, like they say in acting, before you speak, count your Kit Kats, get the pauses right, public speaking, same thing, gather your thoughts, don't respond. And when you build all of these things, Charlie, the reality is this, and I say this goes all the way back to the beginning of that relationship where you ended up with a narcissist, how they knew, because a narcissist knows, they know your trait, they clocked you, and that is because of the energy you were projecting, because of the character you were. Now, when you know your self-worth and value, when you pour into yourself, when you do the work, that daily habits, we're not talking like a one-night thing. I'm talking you start living that lifestyle, you will project that energy, you will command a certain aura around yourself, and you will attract that positivity, but you have to be that.
I couldn't agree with you more. Every word. The reason we end up with alienators is because we're empaths.
Yes.
The reason we're empaths is typically something from our own childhood.
Absolutely.
So just to give you an example, if you had an aloof parent, so it might be your dad, might be your mom, but somebody who's not giving you the love and support you deserved as a child, the reason we become people pleasers is because we learn at a very early age to keep yourself safe. I have to go the extra mile with this parent, to make sure that they give me what I need: food, a roof over my head, security, stability, support. And a lot of us don't get that. So we end up going the extra mile with these parents. We're basically appeasing our parents.
Yes.
That makes us into empaths. Now we become, so that becomes our modus operandi. Now we become people pleasers in life.
Yes.
And then we meet a narcissist, and our personal boundaries are not good. They're not healthy. We don't like conflict. We don't like receiving stuff because we feel guilty. This is where a lot of the guilt comes from. So we end up with somebody who we actually recognize is a bit broken, but we're fixers in life. So we think that's okay. I'll fix this. Add it to my to-do list. But then when we get to alienation, this whole people pleasing thing strikes again, because now our kids are rejecting us. And guess what? It reminds us of what our parents were doing to us when we were really small. We're being rejected again. We're being abandoned. Now we're having to people please our kids. And what?
Yeah, that's deep, Charlie. I mean, I think
just to add to it, what's also going on is those of us who've had aloof parents or difficult parents, our parenting style is based on the stuff that we thought was good, which we repeat from our own childhood, and the stuff that we thought was bad, like an aloof parent. So what do? We go out of our way to try and be really supportive to our kids. But we end up with a narcissist who ends up alienating us from our kids. So now we feel really bad for our kids because they're not getting the love, the support, the care and attention that we wanted to give them. So we feel bad for the kids, we feel bad for ourselves, our guilt comes back into play, and then we think that we're failing as a parent, and it's all related back to this experience we had when we were kids. So focusing on you is the only way you get out of this bear trap and make the changes in you.
So the thing is, Charlie, right? Let's go back to say when you say this is your own upbringing, your childhood programming coming out, because we all revert back to our baseline foundational programming 0 to 7. Yeah. Now I speak to many fathers like yourself. I speak to many men and whatnot. And one thing that I've now seen the pattern, and I've understood this pattern. And the guys once I've discussed it, and I've sort of learned over time, the middle child syndrome, they sort of call it. So they never got, and look, I hate to say it, but from the Asian community, culturally, from my parents' generation, there was always an element of the eldest was always listened to whatever he said. The youngest was slightly spoiled. And there was one guy who was just seen as the work. If any jobs, you're going to do that, or you're going to. But there was a lot of this sort of thing traditionally, especially from my, say, grandparents' era. My parents and people of that generation have that conditioning. I think it's normal. And I hate to say it, in the Asian community, that era, they had the element of the youngest child's going to stay with us and look after us when we get old. So they gave them that extra bit of love and extra bit of, do you know what I'm saying? Like that, also that emotional security. Yes, there was a lot of this stuff, which now I look back at the community, the culture, and I can see all of these things. I speak to a lot of guys, and I can see that. And also, what I've learned along the way is your siblings will treat you in the social hierarchy or the position your parents gave you. It's a subconscious programming. Am I correct in that assessment that I have now obviously been looking into and studying? And that all comes out when they've now been abandoned by their children. And my point is that people pleaser element, you either go one or two ways. Guys either get very depressed at this stage, or then you've got the rebels that just completely, I have ultimately, my people pleasing syndrome element is completely gone. It doesn't exist. It is not, I'm not that guy. It ain't that man. I'm not that man.
Good.
You know what I mean? I am so far from that person, and I've seen that. And like I said, the element of you are the asset now. Put yourself first.
Totally.
That I have embodied. I feel fully. But yes, but that's what I wanted to go to, that middle child syndrome, that programming. And a lot of guys, I can see that.
You know, we all have different. We all have. If you're the middle child, the older child, or the younger child, you're going to come into your adult life with that subconscious programming, and that's the way you experience the world around you.
Absolutely.
And it's really important for all of us to recognize who is the version of me, and what is my kind of like belief system about me, because that's how I experience the world around me. And when I change my belief system about me, which is exactly what you're talking about, you're the asset, you start experiencing the world around you differently.
Absolutely.
When you have a higher sense of self-confidence, higher sense of self-worth, your boundaries change.
Yes.
People respect you more. You find it easier to deal with conflict situations.
Yes.
You just become a stronger person. It doesn't mean you're going to become a narcissist or a bully.
No. But set healthy boundaries. You have to have healthy boundaries.
And something that all of us empaths have, we have this deep resilience as empaths. We're so used to giving to lots of other people. And that resilience we normally manifests itself in compromising our position for the benefit of others.
Yes.
Turn that resilience around, that determination, and make it about rebuilding you in exactly the way that you've described. And also, this is where I often talk about discomfort. Discomfort is your friend, because a lot of us as empaths, we don't like, for instance, conflict. So we will avoid conflict, but actually you want to get used to standing up and saying, no, I'm not prepared to accept this. Now, this all comes from that relationship with your parents again, or whoever it was, that basically they've taught you as an empath, you don't win fights. Because you don't. So no point in getting into a conflict because I never win it. And guess what? It just makes me feel unsafe. So when you experience that later on, and it could be as simple as, somebody comes up, that the waiter in a restaurant says, how's your meal? And you're not having a great meal.
You won't say nothing.
You won't say.
Yeah. Oh, you're that guy. Oh.
You feel bad later about not standing up for yourself. So what I would encourage every parent to do is start saying to the waiter, no, that, there's something wrong with my meal. I want you to do something about it. I'm just using the waiter as an example.
Yeah.
It feels uncomfortable because your subconscious has programmed this idea of that anything to do with conflict is unsafe. I'm going to lose. It's not going to be good for me. But you can unprogram yourself, reprogram yourself.
Yes.
So learn to start standing up for yourself, and you'll discover, to your amazement, that most people will back off.
Change your associations. Yes.
Exactly. They will give you what you want. You just have to ask for it.
Yes.
And the first time you do it, you're going to feel horrible. The second time you do it, it's a little bit easier. By the time you've done it 10 times, you're not waiting for the waiter to come over to you. You're calling the waiter over and saying, oi, mush, you need to sort this out.
Yeah, right. Mush. There's a fly in my soup. Get on with it.
Yeah, but it's exactly the same thing.
You're conditioning your brain slowly, and look, it goes back to this sort of like neuro-linguistic programming, all sorts of coaching. Tony Robbins says again, the pain and pleasure associations. Because we have an associate, you got to understand how your brain works. To unwire this, you have to understand how your brain. So I've got to get this in, man. I love coming out of this one. Is the pain and pleasure associations. On a subconscious level, every single decision we make as human beings goes down to two filters of factors on the baseline. You're either moving away from pain or you're moving towards pleasure. The pain association with the conflict. Now, this coincides nicely with this channel because, as you may have noticed, Charlie, there's a lot of these martial arts stuff and wrestling and jiu-jitsu and all the uncomfortable things. Conflict, that's the biggest conflict, where you're putting yourself in an uncomfortable, dangerous situation. Your ego is going to challenge you. You might lose. There's so many paradigms at play when you're there. Your hands don't lie. In a conflict, in a fight, whether you're scared, it will play out. Whether you're too anxious, it will play out. Whether you're too nervous, whether you're too egotistical, whether you're too cocky, whether you're literally, whatever the true nature is will come out in that arena. Martial arts, I think, is a great place to, start. Go to a friendly club. Sensei Mus, he was here the other night, BJJ, East London. You go there, friendly environment, and start doing something uncomfortable that you're not used to. That's what I do. That's what I suggest to people. And, that's what I try and
throw yourself to do. But also, I would encourage every parent, because just before we started, I said, this is all about you as an individual and me as an individual. How we are dictates how we experience the world around us. So we talked about grief. That's your version of grief. Guilt is your version of guilt. Injustice is your version of injustice. And you really have to, those are just symptoms of something much deeper within you, a belief system. And the way you get rid of guilt is you have to go deep inside of you and say, what is it at a basic level that is making me feel guilty.
Mm-hmm.
And it will normally come down to, you talk about pleasure and pain. I talk about safety in the same way. We either feel safe or we don't feel safe.
Yes.
And you can normally tell exactly where somebody's at. Are they comfortable or are they uncomfortable? So, and it comes back to our kids. When they're reaching out to us, they're uncomfortable. They want to feel safe with us. Our job is to make them feel safe. But we're feeling unsafe because when our kids are rejecting us, we're not feeling okay. So we have to spend time looking at ourselves and say, okay, what is it about my kid rejecting me? Why do I feel unsafe? And when we can start engaging with that, very often it'll come back to things again like that aloof parent. Once we can really understand ourselves, we know who we are when we're then dealing with our kids. So when our kids are doing things that would normally trigger us, because they're reminding us of not being safe when we were kids, when we were being rejected, when our kids are being cheeky or they are not responding to our texts, you just have to go, oh yeah, okay, I get it now. This is just my old reaction of not feeling safe because that's my rejection when I was a child myself. So that's what's going on. So once I've dealt with that, you won't feel, when your kid's not responding, you won't feel triggered.
Okay.
When your car rejects you, you won't feel so upset. And that's the state you want to be in when you start rebuilding the relationship with your kid. Because when you're genuinely not being triggered, the kid can't hurt you.
Okay.
And if you haven't dealt with your own shit, the kid's going to say stuff, you're going to get triggered, and you're going to find it much harder to rebuild that relationship. So it's all down to you.
Okay, Charlie, there's a couple of things. I mean, this is a very interesting perspective that didn't cross my mind before. Now, do you feel safe? And I mean, that seems so obvious to me now on a paradigm of life, on as a filter of decision making.
Yeah.
Of safety, security. Sometimes someone say, I want to earn so much money so that I can secure my house, this and that, because you want to go to that place of safety and security. What will that give you? It'll give you safety. What will that give you? It'll give me peace of mind. What will that give you? Do you see what I'm trying to say? We keep going back in the layers. So can you elaborate more on you're saying that filter of do I feel safe or not? That comes back to the 0 to 7 pre-programming from childhood and what you experienced as a child from your parents. You're saying it comes back to what that baseline program.
Yeah. So basically, every decision that let's just accept that we are making, whether or not we want to recognize it, thousands of choices and decisions every single day.
Yes.
What time I get up, what I eat, do I brush my teeth? How do I, am I going to be on time to get to work? Am I going to be polite? We're just making thousands of decisions all the time. Your decisions are all based, your go-to point is your subconscious.
Yes.
Your subconscious is full of your own belief system.
Yes.
Your own belief system has come from when you're a kid. So in many ways, a lot of us are still walking around the place using a child's subconscious set of experiences to determine the choices that we make today. And this is the link back to discomfort. You have to start, if you carry on making the same choices today, then basically your tomorrow is going to look like yesterday. So so you are the sum of all your choices. You are where you are today because of all the choices made leading up to today.
Yes.
You carry on making the same choices, your future's going to look the same.
100%. Okay.
So you've got to start making different choices.
Yeah. If you don't change, if nothing changes, nothing changes. This is the point. Something has to change for the outcome to change. The current circumstances you find yourself in is the product of what choices you made the last 12 months, the last 2 years, the last 5 years. Like I said, when I say to someone, when you look at someone, they're in superb shape, absolutely ripped. That is the consequence and the end result of daily habits of the last 12 months, last 2 years. That guy's told me something about the choices he made, the mindset that he's at, and how much he has done. Like, that is just the end result, the end product. He ain't got a good body. That's just the end result and the product of a choice, ultimately. So they have to first accept.
Yeah, people would look at that person and say, I wish I could be like that. don't wish you want to be like that. Make the choice.
Make the choice. That's it.
It's
Power of
time.
decisions. Tony Robbins talks about it. Power of decisions.
Yeah, but we're lazy by nature. And this is one of our great issues when it comes to parental alienation as well. We have to be mentally stronger and make choices that are better for us, including getting on with our lives. Because a lot of us put our lives on hold because we're stuck in the grief and the guilt. And we feel uncomfortable making a choice that's positive for us.
Yes.
And guess what? When our kids then spend time with us, they spend time with a sad, depressed person who's not really making the most of their life.
Yeah, you don't want to be that guy.
You don't want to be that person. But the counterintuitive, and so much of alienation is counterintuitive. The counterintuitive option is get on with your life. Enjoy yourself. Give yourself permission to have a happy, fulfilling life. Now you're somebody that the kids are far more likely to look up to. You might go through an initial period where you get criticized for enjoying yourself, but just get through that. Ultimately, the kids will be going, do you know what? I respect Dad for who he is.
I think that's a very powerful way you've framed it, because like you said, look, if losing your children, like I said, so in order to stop drifting through life, you need a wake-up call. You've been with a narcissist, it can break your spirit and soul. You've gone through, basically you're at a juncture in life, as I've highlighted many times, at a turning point where, yes, this great tragedy, this great pain, this trauma is a great springboard, because if you can evaluate your whole emotional subconscious programming back to your childhood program, you've now got access to those files. Because look, before this trauma, you never had access to those files. On a deeper level, you wouldn't know this. You're just drifting. You're not that conscious of it.
You didn't feel you had to, because
you didn't need to. Yeah.
You were on autopilot, and this is the biggest risk for most of us are on autopilot. We're not really taking responsibility for our lives. But alienation kind of drops you from a great height and you smash into 1,000 pieces on the ground. You have a choice. Am I going to put myself back as the same old version of me? Am I going to put myself back as an even worse version of me? The sad, depressed, guilty, I'm just a human wreck where my life is awful. Or am I going to rebuild something better? And when you think of it like that, you'd always go for the build something better option.
Absolutely. And I think that is exactly it. This whole scenario, as bad as it is, as much as it's a tragedy, it is a great springboard where you can take control of the steering wheel of life and start living on purpose, really unearth the potential that's been subdued, because you were on autopilot, drifting on the conditioning and programming that society, family, whatever your upbringing was. You are a product of the 5 people you were exposed to, grew up around, the environment, however you want to look at it. This is now a chance to really find out who you are, and better still, who you could be. If you applied yourself, who could you be?
Absolutely. I use the analogy of the rearview mirror. Most of us, because our subconscious is full of these experiences from the past, which we've now added to through the abuse that we went through with our exes and our really traumatic breakups and our alienation. So we've loaded in a whole load of new traumatic experiences, and our choices are based on whatever is in our subconscious.
Yes.
It basically means that we're driving our cars by only looking in the rearview mirror, which is the subconscious.
Yes.
Now, we all know that driving a car by looking through the rearview mirror only when you're going in a forwards direction is madness. You want to look out the windshield.
Yes.
So we have to start proactively saying the past is the past. Just because something happened in the past does not mean it's going to happen to me again in the future. So what do I want to start doing? Where do I actually want to get to? Because the other thing is, your subconscious will help you to do whatever it is you feed it with.
Yes.
So if you're having a conversation with yourself about grief, guilt, injustice, anxiety, fear, your subconscious will go, Farouk, you want me to think about grief, guilt, and justice and fear?
That's where you're
Give
going.
me a couple of hours, I'll get back to you. And it does.
Your brain will upload those files and negativity will come to the surface. And this is what I'm saying. This is the gripe.
Wake you to sleep. It'll disturb you. Whatever you're doing in the day, it will disturb you. If your thinking is, I want to read a book a week, I want to push some weight, I want to be the best person possible for my kids, I want to make a real success of myself, that's a different conversation.
100%.
Now your subconscious is thinking, so how do I get to a point of reading a book a week? How do I get to the point of being the wall, pushing all the weights I want? How do I get to be the person I want to be? Now you're looking at the windshield.
It's activating the reticular activation system in your brain now. And look, I love talking about this because again, this is real. People think coaching is all superficial, this and that. Get help. People don't understand the depth of this. Now, the old analogy again. It's two people can look at something. One might see problems, the other might see opportunities because your lens is different. Because your brain is negatively biased, but some people have programmed it only to see the positivity and opportunities. You're negative. The guy always moans. He moans about everything. He's that guy. He always moans. And that is infectious. But the key is this. The other thing is this. I say to people now, an example of this is like, when you get a new car or your friend gets a specific car, suddenly, why is it that you see that car everywhere? Yeah. When you get a new car, you suddenly consciously notice that car on your screen whenever you're driving. Then you notice this car's everywhere. Yeah. Now, did it magically appear suddenly? Did it just suddenly appear, or was it always there? Now, the answer is we know it was always there. But the question is this, Charlie. If it was always there, why didn't you see it before? Why didn't you notice it before? And if you didn't notice that, what other things in life are passing you by that you can't see because you've got the wrong lenses?
Absolutely.
Bang, that right there.
Absolutely. It's so simple. And also, just for the sake of any parents who are watching this and thinking, Charlie's being really theoretical. Not a bit of it. I've been through this. I've had what I call pre-alienation, which is the build-up to basically the character assassination. I had a decade of that. I wasn't aware of it because I didn't know what alienation was at that point.
Yeah, me
I had
too.
5 years of full-on alienation. I had years of no contact. I've spent those lonely nights by myself, as everybody does. My life was a mess. Try not to swear. It was a real mess. I picked myself up and turned everything around. And so I'm the living embodiment of everything that I'm prescribing to people. It's not some theoretical exercise. And all the coaching work that I do and everything, the posts and everything I do, they're all about follow these steps, things will get better for you.
Absolutely.
And follow them as soon as you can. Don't waste time, because so many parents, that this whole thing of the grief and the guilt, this baton that we're running around with, get rid of it today. Don't even wait till tomorrow. Start getting rid of it today, because you just extend your pain for an unnecessarily long period of time.
Absolutely. Look, absolutely. That's a very real message. And just to those that are watching, listen, I haven't seen, spoken, heard, not seen a photo. I mean, my kid could walk past me. I might even recognize him. They might not recognize. I mean, that's how long it's been. Yeah, that's how it feels. And you're talking about, Charlie, like how you're going to be with your kids. I had this vision now, because like the last time I saw them, it was 7, 5, and 3. So now they are 11, 8, and everyone's coming to 5. It's a different time period, but they're still kids. And like I said, because that moment they are frozen in my mind to the last time I saw them. Absolutely. I just sort of had this thought that if I see them, like, let's say for argument's sake, gone to a contact center, they've walked in. I've sort of got this thing where, because like you said, you don't want to show them that weakness or pain or grief or that he's hurt, because that will just trigger their pain. So there's an element of, in my mind, I'll just run up to them, grab them, pick them up. Daddy's here, let's play. Let's just pick up where we left off. I'll swing them around the room, messing about, this and that, and start play fighting, start chasing them, get the water gun out, start blasting.
I hate to say that's probably
is that not happening? Or am I just
because again, that's us. we have to stop ourselves and saying, what do I want, but what's actually going to happen? And again, this is all the preparation stuff. If kids, when they first meet us, they're often really reluctant. Sometimes, if you're lucky, they just start off where you left off, and they're happy and they're great. But you have to let them give you the lead. You've got to show that you're available and loving and supportive. But if they don't want, if they're not making eye contact with you, don't try and give them a hug.
Okay, don't overdo it. You're saying don't overdo it, right? But okay,
well, because we're just focusing on us again. We're focusing on our need and our desire to have the relationship back with our kids immediately. But they might need time.
Okay, John. Okay, I'm looking at it from the perspective. Obviously, you tell me, right? Yeah. So I'm thinking of it from the perspective of their kids. If you break the ice and they suddenly start having fun, they might look at you and think, "Oh, not as dad, but this guy's fun. This guy used to be our dad, but he's just this guy now. Oh, look, we just met him. He's so much fun. Like, do you know what I mean?"
I hate to be the bearer of bad news.
No, give it to me cold, Charlie. Give it to me straight.
That's typically not what happens. Very often, because the kids have been put under pressure for so long, and they've been told what an asshole we are for so long, they get to believe a lot of this stuff. Okay. And also, it's a fear-based relationship with the alienating parent. So they're afraid of, in this case, their mum. So if the mum thinks that they're having fun with you, then the kids are thinking, I'm going to get punished.
Yes.
If the mum succeeded in stopping them having a relationship with you, so part of their subconscious is saying, if I have a good time with dad, if I have a relationship with dad, I'm going to get punished.
Yes. So that can go back to pre-alienation. That was happening in pre-alienation. So
So the kids, when they're rejecting us, when they're being rude to us, when they're ignoring us, these are all coping mechanisms. These are the kids basically just trying to keep themselves safe. They want the relationship with you fundamentally, but they need to know that it's safe to have that relationship with you. And they need to know that they're not going to get, have their lives made tremendously difficult as soon as they get home by their mum. And when you get multiple kids in together, it gets even harder, because if you have, 2 or 3 kids, they're all spying on each other. And they'll go back to mum afterwards and say, the oldest or the middle or the youngest, they got on really well with dad. That kid is going to get into trouble.
Yes.
So there's a lot more. But this is all stuff that parents can learn about. And this is what I do with my coaching. I basically teach them that there's 3 key areas. Alienation. What is alienation? What is your kid going through? How is your kid going to react to you? You can predict. Most of this stuff is predictable because they all go through the same sort of stuff. And I talked about spectrums earlier. The kids will all sit on a spectrum between mildly and severely alienated. And so you want to understand where your child fits on that spectrum. What is the experience they're likely to have had? And also, what is their character as a child? Some children are very malleable, some are very strong. So who do I have to be for that kid? Then there's you. So again, there's a spectrum. Am I in a good space? Am I really healed? Am I strong? Is my well-being in a good space? Am I being resilient? Or am I still a quivering wreck? Because if I'm in a quivering wreck space, it's going to be really hard for me to rebuild with my kid because I'm not coping well. But when you're in a healed space, now you're in a much better position to rebuild with your kid. And then there's also the alienator, because the alienators sit on the spectrum. There are some people who are kind of almost dabbling in alienation, and then they're not doing too much damage to us. And it's more of an annoyance. And it's a little bit awkward, but it's not, to the point of a severely alienated kid and they've cut us off. The alienators, you're not going to change an alienator, but you can mitigate the damage they do. Okay. So it's a chess game with them. So for instance, and it's safety again, if you do something that irritates an alienator, their go-to position is they're going to take it out on the kid.
Yes.
So if you're going through a divorce and you're going through a financial settlement, everything that you do that is not giving the alienator what they want, they're going to alienate your kids. If you're fighting for custody and they're not getting what they want, they're going to alienate your kids. They might even come up with false allegations, which you then have to fight, and then they now have your kids all the time. You've got no contact with them. If you take them to court, they're going to feel uncomfortable. They're going to take it out on your kids. So you have to really start thinking about, okay, what are the things that I am potentially doing that are actually going to make things worse for the kids?
Chess game, one step ahead, right?
Yeah. And sometimes you have to, it's counterintuitive, sometimes you have to give your kids more space to stop to take them out of this conflict that's happening between the other parent and you. And you just defending yourself is, as far as I'm concerned, that's putting them in the conflict space.
Yes,
that's putting them in the conflict space. So you've got to do things that removes your child from the conflict space so they can trust you, so they can feel safe with you.
Okay, that makes.
But we have, it's none of this is actually that complicated. But I liken it to a bowl of spaghetti. It's like you can't analyze every single strand of spaghetti at the same time. You've got to pull out a piece, have a look at it, hold it up and go, okay, what's in this particular piece of spaghetti? That might be, why am I feeling grief? What is sitting behind my sense of grief? You can start looking at it and go, oh, okay, this relates back to some childhood experience of me, some sense of loss or some sense of abandonment. It's always going to come back to something you don't feel safe about. And it might have several bits to it. But you go, okay, so that's grief. I've now sorted out grief. Let's pick up the next guilt. You have to dissect this whole experience into little bite-sized chunks and understand it, how they all fit together, and then start rebuilding into the future that you want.
Okay, Mr. Charlie, I just want to touch on something. Mr. Ryan's in the waiting room. I'm going to bring Mr. Ryan on in a minute. The people are shouting out. I just want to say thank you to Mr. Ryan before he comes on. He has been in the comments answering questions, picking up the slack. So listen, man, shout out to him.
He sounds wonderful.
I just want to say, Charlie, so what I'm mainly getting is this: the keys. It's the same as when I say to Father, when you're going to court, patience. Don't react or respond. Cool and composed. You have to be bigger than the situation. You have to look at it from higher and above. And these little things, you can't get triggered into the playground for these little things. So you have to be a master of the emotions from a higher place. You have to be that bigger person. You have to become that guy or that person that can oversee and not respond to that little. Do you see what I'm trying to say? I'm getting a lot of that. And I think it's the message is the same. The ability to see from the other person's point of view, calculate all the consequences, look at all the mechanics of that one situation before you respond or react, and remember your child focus. My child will suffer. I am a parent. It's not about me. You are still a father. You are still a parent. Your job is to protect your child, and that has to remain at the forefront. And in order to do that, you build yourself, your personality through these trials and tribulations, put work into yourself, get therapy, get coaching, build yourself up and become that person. It comes back down to self-investment, and anything in life, you'll only get out of life what you put in. You'll only get out of yourself what you put into yourself. So I think we've all got work to do. Let me bring on Mr. Ryan.
We all do.
Mr. Ryan, what time do you call this, bro? What time do you call this, bro?
I'm sorry, fella. I've been busy. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
I'm not going to gate crash this party because I have been listening, and I have been answering non-specific questions in the group chat just to sort of keep the flow going. But no, it's been the reason I stayed out of it was one because I can't profess to have Charlie's expertise. That's why I rely on Charlie. It is a horrible area, and obviously I deal with it whilst Charlie deals with it out in the wide world. I deal with it in a courtroom where we have the added aspect of the fact that courts are really uncomfortable with the principle of parental alienation, and there are still too many judges who just hope that it'll go away and not be mentioned. It's a difficult area, but as I say, I'm not gate crashing. I'm passing through. I'm just passing through, Farouk. So,
but it's such an important topic as well, because I was just doing something earlier, which and exactly that is, how do we? The tools are there, but how do we get the education up, the level of awareness up, so that judges, we don't necessarily need to get it into law. Even if a judge would accept that there is this thing called parental alienation and understood it, that would be enough, I think, for them to start saying, yeah, I need to start making rulings that are aligned to the reality of what's going on. But they
very much. I mean, there is now, and I made a comment in the comments, but there is now case law over the course of the last 2 years where some senior judges are daring to use the phrase parental alienation and accepting the fact that it's a real thing. But what I have found is, in order to get a judge to deal with it, pick up on it and tackle it head on, is to actually frame it as psychological abuse of children. Because I say that they're very, very uncomfortable with the phrasing of parental alienation, but because of the whole history of that phrase going back to the US. So psychological abuse of children, I've got a number of those cases running at the moment, and I very deliberately avoid, the phrasing parental alienation. Kafka's quite like the phrase inhospitable. They quite like hostility. They quite like intractable hostility. They quite like implacable hostility. They're just frightened of the phrase parental alienation.
Yeah, I think it's less important to have a title, and it's more important to actually focus on what are the behaviours that are carrying behind that. And I think one of the bits of research says there are 17 different behaviours. A chap called William Burnett did this great thing called 5-factor model, and it's basically 5 things that helps you to determine whether or not a child is being parentally alienated. You don't need to give it the title parental alienation, but the behaviours are there, and then there are 17 sides demonstrating it. It's quite straightforward stuff, but it's abuse.
It is. Well, yes, as I say, regardless of how you cut the cloth, it is abuse. So. But there we go. Anyway, I'm not stopping. I'm going again. I'm going to leave you blokes to carry on and finish off, because I'm in court every day this week, so I need to go and finish preparing for it.
Do you have any questions about anything that we've been talking about? My biggest concern, you guys have been obviously, exploring the world of coaching, and I come at it from a legal perspective. So from my perspective, the reintroduction, when I get past a point in a case where, we've accepted it's psychological abuse, the reintroduction of those children to the alienated parent, to the parent who has been ostracized, is still an area that the court is uncomfortable with, because they don't really know how to do it. That they are frightened about change of residency. That terrifies them, the principle of change of residency. They don't have the resource to start talking about, therapeutic remedy, because they just haven't got the money. Because the next question is, when I say, I know, let's put the children and the family through therapy, well, who's going to pay for it? So we have this issue, and I think you're absolutely right with the point that you guys have been making right throughout this, where, the parent who is alienated has really got to park the fact that they are the victim, and focus on the fact that Christmas Day is coming, and it may not be today, and it may not be in a year's time, and it may not be in 5 years' time, but at some point these children, because children are what children are, and at some point they are going to come and re-engage, and you need to be ready for that day. But the court is poor, incredibly poor, where they're looking to
accelerate that day of reintroduction, they have no idea how to do it. And they just kind of just lay an order out that says, well, the children will now see mother or father, whoever the alienated one is, and then just expect it to happen. And it's just not going.
There's this whole lack of enforcement. I mean, that's probably one of the biggest problems is that you go through this big process to actually get them to court because they won't go through mediation. And then even if you do manage to get a positive judgment, which seems to be incredibly difficult to do in this country, then they don't enforce it.
No, they don't. No, they don't. I have an example. As recently as Friday, I was in court all day on Friday on a case. Doesn't matter what it was. We finished the case. We put together a final order for the children. I was looking after mum in that particular case. We're walking out the door, and the father came over to me and the mother, and he said, "Just to let you know, I have no intention whatsoever of abiding by anything that's just been laid down in that court." And he walked away. And I think, well, no, you're right, you're not. But the court is such a toothless tiger that its ability to enforce you in doing that is nil.
I mean, we have, everything is stacked against us. And one of the things that is a horrible conversation I often have with parents is, do you really want to go back to court to try and enforce an order that is going to be breached again? Because back to the thing I was just saying to Farouk, taking an alienating parent to court makes them feel very unsafe and very vulnerable because they like controlling everything around them. They're very insecure people. And now you've thrown their world up in disarray. And guess what? They're going to take it out on the kids. And sometimes it's catch-22. Sometimes you're better off not going to court because it's just going to be even more damaging to your relationship. As horrible as that is to say to parents, and I'm very honest because I'd rather people know the reality of what they're dealing with rather than seeing it through rose-tinted spectacles. But the court system is such a mess.
Yeah.
I'm so respectful of people like you, Daniel, who are doing amazing work trying to put families together again, because it's very difficult.
It's very difficult because we're in a derelict system, and I don't use that word lightly, but yeah, we are in a derelict system, and it doesn't work, unfortunately, for a whole series of reasons. And yeah, we keep plugging away every day, but unfortunately, until there is a system whereby a court order has some authority, has some weight, has some respect behind it, that's really what it boils down to, this erosion of respect. And steady now, I'm going to start wandering off into societal issues. We're in trouble. We're in trouble. Because unfortunately a court order is reliant on the fact that the two parties involved in it will respect it. And that's all it's got.
And the people who are alienators, who tend to be very narcissistic, don't really respect much other than themselves. They're afraid of the court in case something catastrophic happens to them. But beyond that, they just go back to their old habits again.
No, indeed. I've got too many examples where we've had an alienator who has been frightened on a day because something has happened in the court that's put them on their guard. But that fear lasts 48 hours, and then they're back to where they were.
Yeah.
It dawns on them after 48 hours that actually, once I've gone outside the court building, there's no power out here on the street, so I can carry on doing whatever I'm doing.
Yeah. Just as this might amuse some of the, especially the dads. I ended up going back to court after my kids were I think they were 18 and 20 at the time, so it wasn't really involving them, but it was all to do with the money that I was still paying to my ex. And she'd been starting to see some bloke before we actually split up. And the reason we were going to court is because I stopped paying her maintenance, because I said, look, I'm not paying while you and this guy dilly-dally around. If you want to put your lives together, put your lives together, but I'm paying for it. So she denied in court that this affair had taken place completely. What she didn't know is that I was speaking with this guy on a regular basis at that point in time, because he'd now split up with her. He wanted a shoulder to cry on. He'd reached out to me, told me everything about what had been going on, gave me loads of ammunition for the court. So I just basically said, well, it was clear that I knew more than I should. So my ex made a very bad mistake. She got her friend to contact his wife 3 o'clock in the morning that night after the first court hearing and tell the wife, while he is in bed with her, everything that had taken place with their affair. So, of course, I went back into the court armed with this at the next day of the hearing.
Mm.
And she was also with a Mackenzie friend. And the Mackenzie friend was the person who'd done it, not a trained Mackenzie friend like you, but just a friend. It was wonderful watching them squirm around with the Mackenzie friend. Oh, no, that was me. And it was like, yeah, I mean, the judge couldn't help but go, okay, so Mr. McCready was basically telling the truth. There has been a carnal affair, and Mrs. McCready's been lying to her teeth all the way. Yeah. And it was ironic because she, of course, had been trying to destroy my credibility in the previous day's hearing. It was just, I thought, wonderful. Narcissists are not always the smartest people.
No, often not. They're so focused on themselves that they forget the fact that there are people who are cleverer and quicker.
We all have these horror stories that go through alienation.
We do. Anyway, guys, I'm going to drop out again, and I'll leave you folks to finish off.
Lovely to meet you, Dan.
Good seeing you.
All right, good to see you, folks. See you soon.
Right, before we get any further, Mr. Charlie, I just want to bring up your Instagram page so that people know where to find you and follow you. Guys, this is Mr. Charlie McCready's Instagram page. That's his handle over here, Charlie McCready 1. Check him out, follow him on Instagram. And also, I want to bring this up. Right, Mr. Charlie has got a 4-step to beat parental alienation ebook. Check it out, download it, pay the $9. I mean, I'm sure Mr. Charlie could just send me one. Like, I'll put him on the spot. He could just send me a copy. I mean, my own little free copy.
Yeah,
so yeah,
I'm very happy to.
Yeah, I mean, typical Asian trying to get a freebie. Sorry, Mr. Charlie.
I mean, basically, this e-guide is it's a short, snappy document that will help people to go through. We talked about those 3 things. How to start understanding what your alienated kids have been through, how to understand, what you need to do differently, how to start being different with the alienator, and also the 4th one then is the avoiding common mistakes, because we all make these horrendous mistakes all the time. If anybody does go to click on that link to buy it, they'll also be offered what I call a self-assessment toolkit, and that is basically, we were talking about spectrums. That's something that helps you to work out where you are on each of those spectrums. Again, of those 3 areas: the kid where they're at, you where you're at, the alienator where they're at, and it gives you some helpful tips according to where each of you are on the spectrum and various combinations. What is the sorts of stuff that you should be doing? So if you've got a very alienated kid, severely alienated, but you're coping quite well, then it'll tell you what some of the things you should be doing. If you've got severely alienated kid and you're not coping well, what are some of the things you should be doing? So it's a really simple, kind of almost like Noddy does parental alienation to help people. And also our families and our friends don't understand this stuff. Yes. And it's really helpful to share these materials with them and say, look, this is what I'm dealing with, so that they can start appreciating our perspective.
See, that's a very good point. So look, if anyone's watching who's not going through alienation themselves, but it's their brother or relative or a friend that's going through this, buy this book, understand it, and give this book to them. Like you said, it's a very useful tool to find out where you are on the spectrum. It's got the practical steps in there. So look, I think it's a very valuable piece of kit. So guys, check it out, buy it, download it. Get in touch with, I would say, Mr. Charlie. Get coaching. Yeah, you need coaching generally to progress and get through these things sometimes, and it may change your lens on life, amongst other things.
Yeah, I mean, generally with the way that I help parents, even the first session, which is normally about what's your unique set of circumstances, because everybody's got a completely different situation from everybody else, and so some generalist information is really helpful. But to really crack this nut, I would encourage everybody to go off and get coaching, with Farouk or with me or whomever, because you'll just progress so much faster. And parents, within 2 or 3 sessions with me, parents have got a different lens on, they've got a different perspective. They're starting to see alienation in a completely different way. They're beginning to make choices in a different way. You can make some big changes very, very fast.
Absolutely. Look, absolutely, people, and I just want to say, and take your version, or not take your thoughts on this, Mr. Charlie, because look, as the pain subsides, there's an element of me where, as we spoke about earlier, the urgency, the clarity, and the focus that I had due to the pain, it was like a sixth sense. It gave me not just mental and emotional strength, but it gave me physical strength. I mean, there was nothing I couldn't accomplish in that moment. The clarity, focus, and urgency.
Yeah.
There's almost like an element of it, like I miss it, if you know what I mean. Is that normal?
Yeah, you're talking
adrenaline.
You're talking about the pain aspect of it. So we get driven by pain.
Yes.
And it's like anything in life. If somebody threatens our job, we'll work super hard. If somebody threatens our relationship, we'll start making more effort. Somebody threatens our kids, we'll start making more effort. But it's not a sustainable thing. So we have to start, because you can either be passionate about something, or you can be doing it because you're just in a situation of pain.
Reactive. You're reactive, or you're passionate, is that?
And we have to switch that lens, because this is the whole rear view mirror looking out the windscreen model. Most of us, when we are in that pain space, we're actually spending a lot of time in the rear view mirror, just experiencing a lot of pain and trying to do stuff, trying to get out of that pain. When that pain begins to subside, we can get a bit lethargic. That's the time you really want to start, giving yourself the determination, the routines, the passion. This is why you have to get on with your life.
Yes.
Because you
need structure in your life. Ultimately, you can't.
If you put your life on hold, you're toast. You're just toast. You will do what the alienator wants you to do, which is you will sit, you'll be miserable, and your life will go past you.
You're stuck in that time zone. I just want to say, Mr. Charlie, I have what you have just said there. In these last 3 months, I met a man. He's in his mid-50s, and though I don't think he realizes where he's at, but the core of his issues have come from this divorce, breakup, alienation, and as the years have gone, not a great relationship with his children. And I don't think he can see, he embodies and oozes someone you would call a broken human being, to the point where, except we're not even in that environment of dad's coach, nothing like that. It's just someone I've encountered in my day-to-day travels and journeys, or for some other reason. And he oozes negativity from every aspect. He's so broken, his body language and everything is almost scary. And I have indirectly given him a little coaching, and I've broken him out of it. And he's just one session, the guy's laughing, and people around, I've noticed he seems to laugh and joke a little bit more, because I drilled into a conversation of working. I was with him one-on-one, and I managed to bring some of that out. But I saw the damage. I saw what you can end up as and what you can become, and how broken of a human being he is. And now he's laughing and smiling. So I'll say to you people, you don't want to be that person.
Yeah. Well, one of my friends only recently committed suicide on the back of this.
Oh God!
Because he couldn't cope with the fact that he was no contact with his children, and he just, he didn't get the support that he needed. And the reality is, he's a lovely guy. He could right now be alive and well and be living life to the full. And again, it was a choice. It's so sad, but it was a choice.
No, it is sad. It is sad. And I'll say to people, look, you have to put you first. There is no shame or guilt in putting you first. You are the most important person in your life. You are the most important asset you will have. stop drifting through life and stop sitting in this phase. And I hate to say it'll be harsh, but you have to stop feeling sorry for yourself, because even though you are not with your children, you are still a parent, you are still a father, you still have a job to do.
Yeah.
You need to put yourself together.
You deserve to have a good life. I think this is where
Absolutely. You deserve to be happy.
Yeah, people get caught in this space. They kind of get into that guilt and grief area, and they don't break out of it because they think, oh, well, I don't deserve to have a fulfilling life. How are my kids going to react to the fact that I seem to be enjoying myself?
That's it. Yes.
Get on with it. Get back to having a good life, because your kids, as we were saying before, they don't want to see and don't want to be with a sad, depressed person. They want to be with somebody who's life embracing.
Absolutely. And there's a saying that comes to mind. I heard, self-love is not selfish.
It's not.
You got to love. Listen, before you can give love, before you can give and receive love, you have to love yourself, man. If you don't love yourself, no one else can love you. And another word comes to mind, which takes us back to where we started. You know, that when you beat ourselves up, you're harsh on yourself. 2 words, again, something like forgive yourself. I learned this in coaching, and one aspect of coaching. It's not my main go-to toolbox, but there is a time and place. And you know what? Sometimes you have to first forgive yourself, accept the situation, accept what is, and forgive yourself to then now move on.
Absolutely.
Forgive yourself, move on, and by pouring into yourself, by doing things for yourself, by holding yourself accountable, you are loving yourself. You are becoming the person that you can respect and love, because you are that person. Build those daily habits. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Pull yourself together. Start living on purpose. Embrace life and become that person that your children will be proud of regardless. Become that guy. Become that father. Mr. Charlie, I think we could talk for hours. We've gone on for an hour and a half. I think we'll have to do this again, because there's so many things I wanted to talk about that I didn't even get to. I didn't even, along the way I'm making notes, we're going to talk about this. We didn't even get to. We'll do this again. Is there any final concluding comments that you want to put out there? And if anyone wants to get hold of you, give yourself a little plug, your website, platform, and whatever it is. I've done the Insta. So just give yourself a plug and give us your final conclusion and your thoughts.
Very kind, Farouk. Thank you. Yeah, so if people want to find me, I'm on Instagram at Charlie McCreedy 1. I'm also on Facebook. I have 2 sites there. I've got a personal one, and I also do How to Overcome Parental Alienation, which is a bigger group. I do posts every day. So there's lots of really helpful hints and tips, practical stuff, as well as inspiration and hope within those posts. And for anybody who wants to do parental alienation coaching with me, again, you can reach out to me on those platforms. I'm happy to do a little exploration with you. What would be a good solution for you? And then we could look at what sort of coaching solution is best, because everybody's unique. But yeah, I think the key thing, just to kind of sum up, is what you were saying before. Start taking back control of your life, because everything centers around that. And I know that's counterintuitive, because we all want to focus on our kids, but you are the foundation stone. When you rebuild yourself into a good place and you have the knowledge about how to help your kids, then it all starts to get better. But it's all, you have to start with you. It sounds weird, but it's so true. But I hope that was helpful.
Charlie, listen, Charlie, that was, I think, a masterclass. There's loads more we need to dive in. If you ever do a Facebook live, let me know. Maybe you can do a live together on Facebook, just to get the message out further. Also, if I remember, you're on LinkedIn as well, aren't you? Are you on LinkedIn? I
am on LinkedIn as well. So I'm there as Charlie McCreedy, and I also I've got some stuff on YouTube as well.
Okay.
Not a fraction of what you have, Farouk, but I'm progressively doing more and more on YouTube, because I think it's really helpful for people to hear conversations as well as referring to posts. But people like to hear the golden nuggets that come out of these sorts of podcasts.
Absolutely, guys. As you know, and listen to everyone in the comments. Thank you for engaging. Apologies, I couldn't pick up on it too much. Mr. Ryan did try and pick up the slack. I just want to say, if any family court related questions, we will try and pick up next week. But I hope you found this beneficial. If you want Charlie again more often and more regular, just let me know. I'll try and pin him down more often because there's a lot of information. I think there's a lot to digest. Shout out, thank you to each and every one of you. Like, subscribe, follow, and share. We're here every Sunday, 8 p.m. This Wednesday, 9 p.m., I've got a bodybuilding coach coming on just to try and help people, motivate people, get in the gym, give you hints and tips. So I've got that coach coming on as well. So tune into that. We're here putting out value and knowledge to help people elevate their life and unlock their full potential and get to a good place, guys. We're here for you. Like, subscribe, follow, and share. And thank you for joining. And shout out to Mr. Charlie again.